I never thought a week in a tiny beach town would change the way someone looked at me, but here we are. I mean, I always figured vacations were about breaking routine, soaking up sun, and maybe catching a few Instagram-worthy moments, not about completely flipping how a guy sees you. But that's exactly what happened with Matt. So to back up a bit, Matt and I have been friends since college. We met during orientation, and somehow ended up in the same study group for a brutal philosophy class. We clicked instantly, mostly because we both had a similar, sarcastic sense of humor and a shared love for terrible horror movies. Over the years, our friendship settled into this comfortable groove. We'd hang out, grab drinks, binge watch shows, but it never went beyond that, at least not from my side. I always thought Matt was way out of my league. He's tall, effortlessly handsome, with this easy charm that makes everyone want to be around him. I never imagined he'd look at me that way. Or, at least, not until that trip. It all started when Matt suggested we take a vacation together. Nothing fancy, just a week away from the city, somewhere quiet where we could relax, maybe reset a little. I was hesitant at first, mostly because we'd never done anything like that. Just the two of us, away from the usual crowd. But something about the idea sounded good, especially after the year we'd had. Work was a grind, and honestly, I thought a change of scenery might be exactly what I needed. We settled on this little coastal town about 3 hours from the city. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and the biggest event of the week is the farmers market on Saturday mornings. Perfect, right? Small enough to disconnect, but enough charm to keep things interesting. The first day was exactly what you'd expect. Lazy mornings, long walks on the beach, and too many cups of coffee at a cafe with terrible Wi-Fi but amazing blueberry muffins. We talked a lot, not just the usual surface stuff, but stuff we'd never really said out loud before. Like how Matt sometimes felt trapped by the expectations of his family, or how I've always struggled with feeling invisible in a crowd. And that's when things started to shift. There was this moment, maybe the third or fourth day in, when we were sitting on the porch of the little cabin we rented. The sun was setting, casting this golden light that made everything look softer. Matt was telling me about a dream he'd had, a weird kind of scary one about being lost, but then finding someone who made everything make sense again. He looked at me then, really looked, and it wasn't the same way he usually did. It was different, like I'd suddenly become the person in that dream. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was imagining things. But over the next few days, the way Matt acted around me changed too. Small stuff at first, longer glances, subtle touches on my arm when he laughed, the way he'd sometimes catch me looking at him and smile in this quiet, almost shy way. By the time the week was winding down, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I was falling for him, hard. The vacation wasn't just a break from reality. It was the start of something new between us, something I wasn't sure either of us was ready for. And that's where things stood the last night before we were supposed to head home. We were sitting by a bonfire on the beach, the sound of the waves mixing with the crackling fire, and I could feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. Matt looked over at me, his eyes reflecting the flames, and I knew this trip had changed everything, but I didn't know yet if it was for better or worse. The firelight flickered across Matt's face, making his eyes look almost electric. There was this tension in the air, thick enough that I could almost reach out and touch it. Neither of us said anything for a while, just sitting there, the steady roar of the ocean filling the silence between us. Then Matt spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. You ever feel like life's just been waiting for you to make the first move? Like it's all been on pause until you decide to jump? I glanced over at him, surprised by how serious he sounded. Usually, Matt was the guy cracking jokes or deflecting with sarcasm, not the one getting all philosophical by a damn bonfire on a beach. Maybe, I said, trying to keep my voice casual, though my heart was doing this stupid, fast beat thing. Why? You thinking about making a move? He smiled, but it was small, almost shy. Yeah, I guess I am. Then he looked right at me, his eyes searching, like he was trying to figure out if I was on the same page. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to say something smart or funny, but all that came out was, I think you might be reading me pretty damn well right now. Matt laughed softly, this warm sound that felt like it should be a soundtrack to the moment. Good, because I've been trying to figure out how to say this for days. I swallowed hard, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something huge. "Okay," I said, "say it." He took a deep breath and reached out, his hand brushing against mine. It wasn't a grand gesture or anything, just a light touch that somehow made my skin buzz. "I think I've been looking at you differently since this trip started. Like, not just as my best friend, but something more." He didn't say it like it was a question. He said it like it was the simplest truth in the world, even though I knew it was probably terrifying for him to admit. I squeezed his hand, feeling like the whole damn world had shifted. "You're not the only one." That was the moment when everything changed. The kind of moment you replay over and over in your head because it feels like something sacred. The kind of moment that breaks down the walls you didn't even realize you'd built around yourself. We sat there for a long time, just holding hands, watching the fire die down and the stars come out. And in that silence, I realized that this trip wasn't just about getting away from the city or taking a break from work. It was about finally seeing each other, the real each other for the first time. The next morning, things felt different, not awkward, but charged, like we were both aware that the space between us had shifted, that we were navigating a new kind of friendship or maybe something more. We went out for breakfast at the little diner by the beach, the one with the peeling paint and the menu that hadn't changed in decades. Over pancakes that were way too sweet and coffee that was way too strong, Matt nudged me with his elbow and said, "So, where do we go from here?" I smiled, feeling a rush of hope and nerves all at once. "Honestly, I have no idea, but I want to find out. With you." He grinned back, that same easy charm that had drawn me in from the start, only now it felt like it was meant just for me. Good answer. The week wrapped up faster than I wanted. The drive back to the city filled with quiet moments and the occasional shared smile that said more than words could. When we got back, life started pulling us in all directions. The usual chaos of work, friends, errands. But something had shifted between us. Something real. In the weeks that followed, we started talking more openly, testing the waters, figuring out what this new thing was. And every time I caught Matt looking at me that way, like I was suddenly the only person in the room, it reminded me that sometimes a simple vacation can change everything. I still can't believe how much that week rewrote the story between us. And honestly, I'm pretty damn glad it did. After that first week back, it felt like we were both tiptoeing around this new dynamic, trying to figure out what it meant without saying too much. Matt would text me at odd hours, random jokes, song lyrics, even a selfie or two, which was kind of a big deal since he wasn't exactly the most selfie-inclined guy. I found myself smiling at my phone more than I thought I would. One Friday night, a couple of weeks later, he called me out of the blue and said, "Let's hang out. No pressure, just us." That phrase stuck with me because, honestly, I wasn't sure what no pressure meant anymore. Was it a date? Was it nothing? I agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and that familiar nervousness that always settled in when you're about to do something that matters. We met up at this cozy little bar downtown that neither of us had been to before. Dim lights, a playlist that was a strange mix of indie and 80s hits, and booths that made it feel like we were tucked away from the rest of the world. We ordered a couple of beers and just talked about everything and nothing. There was this moment when Matt was telling me about a project he'd been working on at his job, and he got that usual confident glint in his eye. But then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "You know, I never really told you how much you matter to me. Not just as a friend. I mean, I've been scared to say it because I didn't want to mess things up between us." I felt my chest tighten. I'd been wrestling with the same fear. "I get it," I said softly. "I was scared too, but I'm glad you said it." He reached out and took my hand across the table. The contact was electric but steady, like something familiar but new all at once. Maybe we're both better at hiding things than we thought. We laughed, but the moment was serious beneath it all. That night marked the shift from maybe we could to we are, even if we didn't say those words out loud. In the following days, we started spending more time together, not just texting or hanging out in groups, but actual one-on-one time. Movie nights at my place, cooking dinner together, Matt's idea, even though he's terrible in the kitchen, and long walks where we talk about everything from family drama to our biggest hopes and fears. One afternoon, we took a trip to the park, sitting on the grass surrounded by autumn leaves. We ended up sharing stories about past relationships, including why they didn't work out. Matt's voice got a little quieter when he talked about how hard it was to come out to his family, and how he sometimes felt like he was living half a life just to keep everyone else comfortable. I could see how vulnerable he was being, and it hit me how much trust we'd built in such a short time. I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I'm here for you no matter what." He smiled, that same shy smile I'd come to adore. "I know, that's what scares me, in the best way possible." We sat there for a while, just soaking it in. It was like we were carving out a little world where we could be ourselves without worrying about judgment or expectations. But of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments when the old patterns crept back in, like the time I got jealous when Matt mentioned another guy he'd gone on a date with. I hated feeling that way, but it was hard to shake. We ended up talking it out over late-night phone calls, messy but honest conversations that made us stronger in the end. Then came the moment I wasn't sure I was ready for. Matt invited me to meet his parents, just like that, with no big fanfare. "They want to meet the guy who's been taking up so much of my time," he said with a grin. I was equal parts thrilled and terrified. Meeting the parents, that's a serious step. But it felt right, and I could tell Matt wanted to take this to the next level, whatever that looked like. The dinner was awkward at first, which I guess is normal when you're meeting the parents of the guy you're falling for. His mom was warm but a little skeptical, his dad quiet but observant. Over the course of the evening, though, they started to warm up, asking questions, sharing stories, laughing at Matt's sarcastic jokes. By the end of the night, I felt like I was part of something bigger than just the two of us. It was like this quiet endorsement from the people who mattered most to him. And honestly, that meant everything. Driving home afterward, Matt reached over and took my hand again, and I realized how much I'd come to rely on that simple touch, the physical proof that we were navigating this new territory together. "I'm glad you came," he said quietly. "Me too," I replied. Then I added, "So what's next for us?" He looked over at me, with that same mix of hope and uncertainty. Whatever we want it to be, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like the future was wide open. No scripts, no expectations, just two guys figuring it out, one day at a time. The days after that dinner with Matt's parents felt like we were walking on this exciting, unpredictable tightrope. Nothing was rushed, but everything felt charged with possibility. We'd settled into this rhythm, texting all day, sneaking quick coffee dates between work, and stealing weekends for little adventures around the city, or just hanging out at one of our apartments. One Saturday afternoon, Matt surprised me by showing up at my place with a picnic basket and a mischievous grin. "I thought we could escape the city noise for a bit," he said, already dragging me toward the door. We ended up at this quiet park I'd never really explored before. The kind of spot where the trees are tall enough to filter the sunlight into golden patches on the grass. We spread out a blanket, unpacked sandwiches, and a bottle of cheap but decent wine, and just sat there, talking and laughing like no one else existed. At some point, Matt leaned back on his elbows and studied me with this intensity that made my stomach flip. "You know," he said slowly, "I never told you what I was scared of before all this started." I blinked, suddenly curious. "What?" Hesitating, he ran a hand through his hair. "That I'd lose you, not just as a friend, but entirely. That if we tried this, it wouldn't work, and I'd be left with nothing." I reached for his hand again. "I had the same fear," I admitted, "but I think we're stronger than that." He smiled, this soft, genuine smile that made my heart want to burst out of my chest. "You're something else, you know that?" I joked, though inside it felt like he'd just handed me this tiny, fragile piece of his heart, and somehow I wanted to protect it more than anything. Over the next few weeks, we kept leaning into this new us, even when things got a little messy. Like the time I accidentally found out Matt had been texting an old flame. Not in a flirty way, but enough to send my head spinning with jealousy and insecurity. It led to an argument that wasn't pretty but peeled back layers of doubt we hadn't aired yet. We sat on my couch, the tension between us thick, and I finally blurted out, "Are you sure about this? About us?" Matt looked tired but determined, more sure than I've ever been about anything. That honesty cracked something open for me. I realized that being in this was going to mean navigating fears and doubts, but it was worth it. So I reached out and pulled him into a hug, holding on like I never wanted to let go. Then came one of those moments that felt like a test. Matt's job was demanding more time, and he started pulling away a bit, buried in deadlines and stress. I felt myself slipping into old habits, wondering if I was still enough, if this was going to fall apart just like I feared. One evening, I showed up at his apartment unannounced, hoping to catch him before he disappeared into work again. When he opened the door, he looked exhausted, but seeing me made his face light up. We didn't say much at first, just collapsed on the couch together. "I'm sorry I've been distant," he murmured after a while. "Work's been a nightmare, but I should have told you instead of shutting down." I shook my head. "No, I get it. But next time, just tell me. We're in this together, remember?" He nodded, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Together. Those simple words felt like a promise, and in that moment, I knew we were building something real. A few weeks later, Matt surprised me again, this time with tickets to a concert for a band we both loved, but had never seen live. We spent the night singing along, arms around each other, feeling like the only two people in the world. After the show, as we walked back to the car under the city lights, Matt stopped and turned to me. "This has been the best few months of my life," he said honestly. I smiled, feeling my chest swell. Mine too. He reached out and took my hand, holding it tight. "No matter what comes next, I want you to know I'm here. For the long haul." That night, lying in bed next to him, I realized how much I'd grown to trust this feeling, that sometimes the scariest leaps lead to the most beautiful places, and as much as that vacation had changed how Matt looked at me, it had changed how I saw myself too. Like finally stepping out of the shadows and into something bright, messy, and entirely worth it. The days that followed felt like we were walking a tightrope, but it was a tightrope stretched between two skyscrapers. Terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. I kept catching myself smiling at the smallest things he did, the way he'd tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear when we were watching movies, or how his laughter sounded when I made a particularly bad pun. It was like every little gesture was a secret code, and the more I decoded it, the deeper I fell. But of course, it wasn't all sunshine and butterflies. One afternoon, about 2 months after that concert, we hit a wall. A moment of tension I didn't see coming. Matt had been quieter than usual for a few days. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just stressed from work again, but when I asked him about it, he gave me this vague answer and shut down. That's when I realized that sometimes love isn't just about the good times. It's about sitting through the uncomfortable silence too. One evening, we were sitting on my couch, the glow of the city lights filtering through the window behind us. I finally broke the silence. "Matt, talk to me. What's going on?" He hesitated, then sighed. "It's stupid," he said, but I could tell it wasn't. "Try me." He looked down at his hands, fingers tangled together. "I guess I'm scared. Scared that I'm not enough for you. That maybe I'm holding you back." My heart clenched. I reached over and grabbed his hands gently. "Matt, you're not holding me back. If anything, you're what pushes me forward. But you have to tell me when you're feeling like this. I can't help if I don't know." He looked up, eyes glistening with something that felt like relief. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner." "Well, now you have," I said, pulling him close. "And I'm not going anywhere." That night, we talked for hours, peeling back layers of doubt and fear until all that was left was honesty. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And sometimes that's all you need. A few weeks later, Matt surprised me again, this time with a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains. The kind of place with no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just the two of us and the sound of the wind through the trees. It felt like the perfect way to escape the noise of the city and the chaos of life. We spent our days hiking, cooking meals together over a tiny stove, and sitting by the fireplace sharing stories. One evening, after a particularly long hike, we collapsed onto the cabin's porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Matt turned to me, his face soft and open. "You know, I never thought I'd find someone who gets me like you do." I smiled, feeling the warmth of the fire in his words. "Me neither. It's like the universe finally stopped messing around." He laughed, then took my hand in his. I want this, us, to be something we build, slowly and surely. No rush, no pressure, just real. I nodded, squeezing his hand. That sounds perfect. That weekend solidified something between us. A quiet promise that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Back in the city, the routines of life tried to pull us apart. Late nights at work, unexpected deadlines, friends who hadn't quite wrapped their heads around the fact that Matt and I were more than just friends now. But each time, we found our way back to each other, like magnets drawn together by something bigger than either of us. One night, as we were walking home from a late dinner, Matt stopped mid-step and looked at me with that familiar intensity. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. I raised an eyebrow, heart pounding. Yeah? What's that? He took a deep breath, then smiled shyly. Would you move in with me? It was such a simple question, but it carried the weight of everything we'd been through. The fears, the laughter, the late-night talks, the quiet moments. I felt my eyes well up, overwhelmed by how much I wanted to say yes. Absolutely, I said, grinning. Matt pulled me into a hug, and I felt like I'd finally found my place, right here with him, in this messy, beautiful thing we were building together. Looking back, I never would have guessed that a random vacation would change everything. But sometimes, it's those unexpected moments, the ones that catch you off guard, that rewrite your story in the best way possible. And with Matt, I'm ready to write the next chapter. Moving in with Matt felt surreal at first. Boxes everywhere, half our stuff tangled together like a weird puzzle we were trying to solve. I remember standing in the middle of his living room, surrounded by a pile of books, clothes, and random kitchen gadgets, thinking, okay, this is real now. We talked about it for weeks before making the leap, but until you're actually there, living with someone, you don't really know what it's like. The good, the messy, and everything in between. The first few days were a mix of excitement and awkward adjustments. Like the time I found Matt in the kitchen at 2 a.m., trying to make a grilled cheese sandwich with one slice of bread. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my own water. He grinned sheepishly. I'm a work in progress. I teased him about his midnight snack habits, and he made fun of my obsession with reorganizing the spice rack. But those little quirks, the stuff that could have driven us crazy, ended up becoming part of the rhythm we found together. One evening, maybe a week in, we were sprawled on the couch watching a dumb reality show neither of us liked. I was half listening when Matt suddenly said, "You ever think about how different all this is from what we thought would happen?" I looked over at him, curious. What do you mean? Like, we never planned on this. Not just living together, but us. The whole thing. I smiled, feeling warmth grow in my chest. Yeah. I guess I thought we'd stay friends forever, and that'd be it. And now here we are. Matt reached out, brushing a hand over my cheek. I'm glad we took the chance. Even when it was scary. I leaned into his touch, feeling like the luckiest guy in the world. Me too. Living together wasn't without challenges, though. There were days when work stress made us snap at each other over dumb things, like leaving dishes in the sink or hogging the blanket at night. But we learned to communicate, to apologize, and to remind each other that we were on the same team. One particular night stands out. I'd had a rough day at work, client meetings that went sideways, deadlines looming. I came home dragging my feet, expecting to just crash. Matt met me at the door with a soft smile and a glass of water. Tough day? I nodded, feeling the weight of it all. Without a word, he pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. For some reason, that simple gesture broke through the fog of stress. We spent the evening curled up on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. It was a reminder that sometimes, love isn't grand gestures or fireworks. It's just being there when the other person needs you most. As the months went by, our relationship deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. We celebrated small victories like getting through a tough week, and we supported each other through family drama and personal doubts. One afternoon, Matt invited me to meet some of his closest friends, people I'd only heard about in passing. Walking into that lively group, I felt a little nervous, worried about fitting in. But they welcomed me like I'd always belonged. teasing Matt mercilessly about how whipped he was, but with genuine warmth that made me feel included. That night, as we walked home hand in hand, Matt squeezed my fingers. "I want you to know, this is my life now, and I'm proud of that." I smiled, heart full. You have no idea how much that means to me. Then came the day I didn't see coming. A quiet Sunday morning when Matt pulled out a small, wrapped box. We were sitting on the couch, sipping coffee, and suddenly he handed it to me with a grin. I unwrapped it carefully to find a simple silver ring. Nothing flashy, but beautiful in its understated way. "I know we're not rushing anything," he said, eyes earnest, "but I want you to know that this is a promise. A promise that whatever happens, I'm in this with you." I blinked, overwhelmed. "Matt, I don't know what to say." He laughed softly, slipping the ring onto my finger. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that I love you, and I'm not going anywhere." I pulled him into a hug, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "I love you too, more than I ever thought I could." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of our shared life, I realized how far we'd come, from friends on a beach vacation to partners building a future together. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. That ring was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a quiet declaration of everything we'd built together. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, but somehow, that made it feel even more real. Like us, imperfect, steady, and genuine. In the weeks that followed, that little silver band became a symbol of our commitment, a reminder that we were choosing each other every day. Life kept rolling forward. Work deadlines still loomed, bills still needed to be paid, and some days were still hard. But through it all, we had this unshakable sense of partnership. One evening, not long after Matt gave me the ring, we found ourselves back at the beach, the same one where everything had quietly shifted months before. The ocean stretched out in front of us, calm and endless. We walked barefoot in the sand, shoulders brushing, the salty breeze carrying a kind of peacefulness I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Matt stopped and turned to me, his eyes catching the fading light. "Funny how a trip can change your whole perspective," he said softly. I smiled, feeling that familiar warmth spread through my chest. "Yeah, I never expected a vacation to lead me here. To us." He reached out, fingers tracing the curve of the ring on my hand. "Me neither, but I'm grateful every day it did." We stood there for a moment, the quiet between us comfortable and full. No grand speeches or fireworks, just two people who had found something rare and steady in each other. That night, as I lay beside him, I thought about how much we'd grown, from tentative friends to partners navigating life together. It hadn't been perfect, and it wasn't always easy, but it was ours. And that felt like enough. I realized something important. Love isn't always about big gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it's about the small, consistent choices, the late-night talks, the shared laughter, the quiet understanding when words aren't needed. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing about that trip or the journey it started, because it taught me how to see Matt differently. Yes, but more than that, it taught me how to see myself, worthy of love, capable of giving it, and brave enough to take the leap. And now, with him by my side, I'm ready for whatever comes next. Together.